I never thought my life would turn out like this. If someone had told me 5 years ago that I would betray the man who gave me everything, I would have called them a liar. But here I am, standing in the wreckage of my own choices, the sound of the door slamming behind him still ringing in my ears. Let me take you back to where it all began. Jack and I had been married for 6 years. He was everything a woman could ask for, loyal, hardworking, and deeply in love with me. We had built a beautiful life together, a home filled with laughter, dreams, and promises of forever. But sometimes, even in the most perfect marriages, cracks begin to form, and I was the one who widened those cracks until they became deep, unfixable wounds. Jack's job required him to travel frequently. At first, the distance was manageable. We would text, call, and video chat late into the night. But as time passed, his trips grew longer, and the loneliness started to creep in. I would lay awake in bed, staring at the empty space beside me, longing for his warmth. Then there was Mark, Jack's best friend. He had been around since before we got married, always the life of the party, always so effortlessly charming. We were close, but I never saw him as anything more than my husband's best friend. At least, that's what I told myself. But then the stolen glances started. The lingering touches that lasted a little too long, the playful conversations that turned into something deeper, something dangerous. I knew it was wrong. I knew I was playing with fire. But there was something intoxicating about the attention, the way he looked at me when he thought no one else was watching. Then came the day that changed everything. Jack had just left for what was supposed to be a week-long business trip. I remember the moment he kissed me goodbye, his lips warm against mine, his arms wrapping around me like they always did. "I love you," he whispered. "I love you too," I responded, but even as the words left my lips, my mind was already elsewhere. That same evening, I made a decision I would regret for the rest of my life. I sent Mark a message, a simple one, "Come over." I convinced myself it was innocent, just a friend visiting another friend, but deep down, I knew better. When he arrived, there was an unspoken understanding between us. The way he looked at me, the way I nervously played with the hem of my dress. One glass of wine turned into 2. Laughter filled the room. The distance between us grew smaller. And then, before I could stop myself, I leaned in. Our lips met, soft and hesitant at first, then more urgent. It was electric, forbidden, and every part of me screamed that this was a mistake. But then, the sound of a key turning in the lock cut through the haze. Jack was home. The moment Jack's key turned in the lock, everything inside me shattered. My mind screamed at me to pull away, to step back, to pretend that nothing had happened. But it was too late. His eyes had already seen what his mind was struggling to process. For a moment, the entire room was swallowed by silence. Mark and I were frozen, caught in a moment that would redefine all of our lives. Jack's expression wasn't one of immediate rage. It was worse. His lips parted slightly, his brows drew together, and his face paled as if the blood had drained from it completely. I had seen my husband angry before, frustrated even, but this was something entirely different. It was devastation, and I was the one who had caused it. I stepped back, my body trembling, hands shaking so violently that I nearly knocked over the wine glass on the table. I wanted to speak, to say something, anything that could take it all back. But there were no words for this. Mark, still frozen in place, ran a hand through his hair and swallowed hard. He looked like a man who had just been caught in a war zone, unsure of whether to run or take the bullet. "Jack." My voice was barely above a whisper. My own breath felt thick in my throat, as though I had swallowed poison. His eyes flickered between me and Mark, his best friend, the man he had trusted with everything. Then, in a voice so eerily calm that it sent a shiver down my spine, he said, "So, this is what you do when I leave?" I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. What could I possibly say? That it wasn't what it looked like? Because it was exactly what it looked like. Mark finally found his voice. "Jack, man, listen." Jack's hand shot up, silencing him instantly. "Don't. Just don't." The weight of his stare crushed me. How long? I blinked. What? His jaw clenched. How long has this been going on? Jack, I swallowed. It was a mistake. A mistake? He let out a humorless laugh, shaking his head. A mistake is forgetting to turn off the stove. A mistake is locking your keys in the car. This is not a mistake, Anne. Tears burned my eyes. But he wasn't done. He turned to Mark, his expression unreadable. You were supposed to be my best friend. Mark lowered his head, shame pooling around him like a dark shadow. I never meant... Jack let out a bitter chuckle. You never meant to get caught? The silence that followed was suffocating. Jack inhaled sharply, then, without another word, turned toward the door. My heart seized in my chest. He was leaving. Jack, wait! I took a step toward him, but he didn't even look back. He reached for the doorknob, his knuckles turning white, and then he was gone. The moment the door clicked shut, it felt like the whole world had collapsed around me. Mark exhaled shakily. Anne. But I didn't want to hear it. I sank onto the couch, burying my face in my hands, knowing that no matter what I did, no matter what I said, nothing would ever be the same again. Jack's absence left an eerie emptiness in the room. The air felt colder, the walls seemed to close in around me. Mark sat in stunned silence, shifting uncomfortably on the couch. My hands trembled as I reached for my phone, desperate to call Jack, to fix the mess I had created. But I knew, deep down, I knew, there was no quick fix for this kind of betrayal. I didn't sleep that night. My mind kept replaying the moment Jack walked out, the look in his eyes haunting me, the weight of my actions pressed down on me, suffocating and inescapable. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw his face, shocked, broken, betrayed. Mark had left not long after Jack did, offering nothing but a murmured apology before disappearing into the night. I sat alone in the living room staring at my phone, willing Jack to call. But he didn't. By morning, my desperation had reached its peak. I couldn't sit in the silence any longer. I grabbed my keys and drove to his brother's house, the only place I thought he might have gone. My hands trembled as I knocked on the door. It took a while before it swung open. Jack stood there, his face unreadable. His eyes, however, told me everything. I had lost him. What do you want, Anne? His voice was hoarse, as if he had spent the night screaming into the void. I need to talk to you, I pleaded. Please. He exhaled sharply, stepping aside. You've got 5 minutes. I walked inside, but the warmth I once felt in his presence was gone. The air between us was thick with pain and disappointment. I turned to face him, but I couldn't find the words. You don't get to stand there and act like you don't know what to say, Jack said, his voice cold. You had no problem making choices last night. Tears filled my eyes. Jack, I made a mistake. A horrible, unforgivable mistake. Unforgivable, he repeated, laughing bitterly. At least we agree on that. I took a shaky step forward. I don't want to lose you. He flinched, as if my words had physically hurt him. You already have. My breath caught in my throat. Please don't say that. What do you expect, Anne? That I'll just forget what I saw? That I'll pretend it never happened? I'll do anything to fix this, I whispered. Jack looked at me then, really looked at me, as if searching for the woman he had loved. Finally, he shook his head. I don't think there's anything left to fix. The finality in his voice shattered what little hope I had left. A sob escaped me, and for the first time I realized just how much I had destroyed. Jack sighed, rubbing a hand down his face. I need time. I clung to that small sliver of hope. Time. Okay, I'll wait. His eyes softened for a brief second before he nodded. I'll call you when I'm ready. With that, he turned away, walking toward the door. I hesitated before following, my heart heavy. As I stepped outside, the cool morning air stung my skin, a stark contrast to the warmth I once knew. I had no idea if he would ever come back. But for now, all I could do was wait and hope that the truth wouldn't burn everything to the ground.